Naruto has one of the greatest collections of antagonists in anime history. It's because Naruto understood something a lot of stories don't. The best villains are reflections of the world that created them. Almost every major antagonist in Naruto is shaped by war, grief, isolation, fear, corruption, or loss. Some of them wanted revenge, some of them wanted peace, and some of them wanted purpose. And some completely lost faith in reality itself. So today we're ranking every major Naruto and Naruto Shippuden antagonist based entirely on philosophy, motivation, ideology, and execution. I'm not doing these on power scaling, or by who had the best fights, or who had the coolest jutsu. We're talking about how compelling they are as people. This is your Noisy Cricket, and let's get into it. So let's start at 25 with Gato. And honestly, there's not much to say here philosophically. Gato is greed, pure greed. His corruption without any deeper ideology attached to it. But I don't necessarily think that that's a bad thing for early Naruto, because at this point in the story, Naruto hadn't fully evolved into the deeply philosophical series it would later grow to become. Gato works because he represents the kind of evil that exists in this world. Rich people exploiting poor communities, using violence and fear to maintain power. He destroys the hidden mist economically, the same way villains destroy people emotionally later in the series. But compared to villains like Pain or Madara, there's obviously not much complexity here. He's just a stepping stone, an effective one, but still a simple antagonist. Number 24, we have White Zetsu. White Zetsu mostly exists as a support for larger villains. He's comic relief, he does espionage, he causes chaos, and honestly, that's fine. Not every villain needs to be deeply philosophical. You need jobbers. But when we're specifically ranking ideology and motive, White Zetsu just doesn't have much to work with. He's memorable because of how weird and unsettling he is, but not because of any worldview or philosophy that he has. Then at number 23, we have his counterpart, Black Zetsu. Black Zetsu is fascinating from a plot perspective. The level of manipulation here is insane. This dude spent centuries engineering conflicts from the shadows. He manipulated Madara, he manipulated Obito, he manipulated the entire shinobi world. But that's the problem. As a philosophical antagonist, he just feels empty. His motive ultimately boils down to reviving Kaguya. That's it. There's no larger commentary on suffering, peace, humanity, or hatred, or greater philosophical ideas. He's more of a living plot twist than a fully realized ideological villain. Is he an important character to the show? Absolutely. But he's not a compelling, philosophically driven antagonist. Number 22, we have Kaguya. Kaguya is one of the weirdest cases in Naruto because conceptually she should have been incredible. The origin of chakra, a godlike being terrified of humanity, someone who viewed people as dangerous because of their endless conflict. There's material there for an amazing villain, but the execution just never lands emotionally. Kaguya doesn't feel connected to Naruto personally the way Pain, Obito, or Madara do. And that's a huge issue this late in the story. By the time she appears, Naruto has already trained us to expect villains with emotional and philosophical depth. Instead, Kaguya feels distant, more abstract, like a final boss rather than a fully fleshed out character. And unfortunately, that's why she lands this low. Also, not to mention, I just don't like the war arc. Number 21, we have Hidan. Now, Hidan is the complete opposite problem, because Hidan has personality for days. He's loud, violent, and unhinged. Honestly, one of the funniest members of the Akatsuki. Every scene with him feels chaotic in the best way possible. But philosophically, there's not too much complexity. His worldview is basically religious extremism mixed with sadism. He hurts people because his faith justifies it. And while that's realistic in a disturbing way, Naruto never really explores it deeper than surface level brutality. Still though, Hidan deserves credit for how memorable he is, because even people who barely remember Naruto remember Hidan. Number 20, we have Kakazu. Kakazu is one of those villains who actually becomes more interesting the more you think about him afterwards. At first glance, he just seems greedy. He's money obsessed and cold and practical. But when you remember his backstory, this was a man that was betrayed by his own village after risking his life for them. So what happens? He completely loses faith in emotional loyalty. To Kakazu, relationships are worthless. Ideals are worthless. Villages are worthless. And money is the only thing people consistently value. And I think that there's something darkly realistic about that. The problem is Naruto never gives him enough screen time to fully explore those ideas. But the foundation is genuinely solid, and I like Kakazu. Number 19, breaking the top 20, we have the Sound Four. The Sound Four are underrated because people mostly remember them for the fights, but philosophically they represent something important in Naruto. The desperate need for belonging. Every single member of the Sound Four was discarded, rejected, or broken in some way before Orochimaru gave them purpose. And that's something that Naruto returns to constantly. People who are ignored or abandoned become vulnerable to manipulation. The Sound Four aren't evil masterminds. They're basically victims who found meaning in serving someone stronger than themselves. And that is sad, especially because they die believing Orochimaru genuinely cared about them, which he absolutely did not. Number 18, Kimimaro. Kimimaro might honestly be one of the most tragic characters in early Naruto. This kid never had a chance. Born into a clan that treated him like a weapon, locked away because people feared him, and he was only valued for violence. Then Orochimaru comes along and gives him the first thing he's ever had, purpose. That's why Kimimaro worships him so completely. Not because Orochimaru was good, but because people cling to the first source of meaning they find. And what makes Kimimaro so tragic is how calm he is about dying. Because to him, a meaningless life would have been worse. That's genuinely heartbreaking when you think about it. Kimimaro really pulls at the heartstrings. Number 17, we have Kabuto. Kabuto's entire identity crisis is honestly one of the most underrated themes in Naruto. This is a man who spent his entire life adapting to survive. He's a spy, but a medic, and also a follower, and also a copycat. He becomes whatever other people need him to be because he has no idea who he actually is. That's why his obsession with Orochimaru becomes so extreme. Kabuto mistakes imitation for identity. And by the war arc, he's basically trying to become the ultimate version of someone else instead of himself. What makes Kabuto compelling isn't his power, it's his insecurity. A deep, overwhelming insecurity. A lot of people can relate to that feeling of not knowing who they are or who they're supposed to be. Number 16, we have Zabuza. Zabuza is where Naruto's villains start becoming special. Because beneath all the intimidation and brutality, Zabuza is deeply human. The Hidden Mist turns children into killers. They are emotional tools, weapons pretending to be people. And Zabuza became exactly what the system wanted him to become. Just cold, detached, and violent. But Haku exposes the truth within him. Zabuza cares. Or cared. He buried his emotions because the world taught him his emotions were a weakness. And the final moment when he breaks down over Haku, that's one of the first times Naruto really tells us what the series is about. People become monsters because the world forces them to survive that way. And Zabuza teaches that lesson really well. Number 15, I feel like we have a sleeper pick here, Konan. Konan is one of the most overlooked characters in Naruto. I think that's a shame. I really do. Beneath the quiet personality and calm demeanor is somebody carrying an unbelievable amount of grief. Think about everything Konan has lived through. War decimated and destroyed her childhood. She watched Yahiko die. She watched Nagato descend deeper and deeper into despair. And despite all of that, she still held on to pieces of their original dream. That's what makes Conan interesting philosophically. She exists somewhere between hope and hopelessness. Unlike pain, she never fully embraces cruelty as the answer. But unlike Naruto, she also can't fully believe optimism alone will save people. She's stuck in the middle. I think that's incredibly human and relatable, because a lot of people who've suffered don't become monsters. They just become tired. Conan feels emotionally exhausted by the world itself, and yet even after all of that, she still chooses to trust Naruto in the end. Because for someone who's seen nothing but war and manipulation, choosing to believe in someone again is an act of courage. Love Conan. She's a really cool character. Number 14, we have Deidara. Deidara is one of those villains people joke about constantly. But if you actually stop and think about his ideology, it's weirdly compelling. Hear me out. Deidara believes true beauty exists in impermanence. Art isn't meant to last forever. Art is an impact. It's emotion. A single explosive moment burned into memory. That's not even a bad artistic philosophy. What makes Deidara work so well is that Naruto directly contrasts him against Sasori. Sasori wants permanence, eternal art, control over decay itself. Deidara rejects all of that completely. To him, something only becomes beautiful because it disappears. That's actually a really clever ideological clash. And underneath all of the explosions and screaming, Deidara is also incredibly prideful. His art is tied directly to his identity. That's why criticism enrages him so much. When people reject his art, he feels like they're rejecting him as a person. A lot of artists can probably relate to that feeling. I love Deidara. He's a really, really good character. From here on out, I'm going to say that about almost every single one of them, but I just really like Deidara's abilities and stuff. It's very unique for Naruto, and I really, really enjoy it. Number 13, we have Sasori. Sasori is one of the saddest villains in Naruto once you really think about him, because at his core, Sasori is just a grieving child who never emotionally recovered from losing his parents. That's the entire foundation of his philosophy: loss and impermanence. The fear that everything you care about will eventually disappear. So what does Sasori do? He tries to escape humanity entirely. Humans die and humans leave, but puppets don't. Puppets stay exactly how you want them, forever, exactly how you built them. That's horrifying in a really tragic way, because Sasori doesn't just reject people, he rejects emotional vulnerability itself. Because loving people means risking pain. And after what happened to him, he couldn't handle that anymore. What makes his story hit even harder is how lonely he actually is. He's surrounded by puppets, artificial people, fake permanence, trying desperately to fill an emotional void that really never healed. When you look at Sasori that way, he becomes way more tragic than evil. Number 12, we have Danzo. Danzo might genuinely be one of the most realistic villains in the entire series. I hate the guy, but let me explain. Because unlike Madara or Obito, people like Danzo actually exist in the real world. Danzo believes security justifies everything. His manipulation, his assassinations, his sacrificing of innocent people, destroying entire families. To Danzo, morality is secondary to stability. And that's what makes him so dangerous. He truly believes he's protecting the Leaf Village. That's scary. Danzo doesn't wake up thinking he's evil. He wakes up thinking he's doing what is necessary. He's basically the embodiment of authoritarian nationalism. The idea of protecting your nation matters more than protecting your humanity. And Naruto repeatedly shows us the damage that mindset causes. Because Danzo helps create almost every major tragedy connected to the Uchiha. His paranoia directly fuels their hatred. His obsession with control creates more instability, not less. That's one of Naruto's smartest themes. Fear-driven leadership eventually creates the very disasters it's trying to prevent. Number 11, we have someone I think is criminally underrated, Kasame. And I mean that. Because underneath the shark aesthetic and the massive sword is one of the bleakest worldviews in Naruto. Let me explain. Kasame genuinely believes the world is built on lies. Governments lie, villages lie, and people betray each other. And after everything he's experienced in the Bloody Mist era, he's not entirely wrong. Kasame came from a system where shinobi killed their own comrades to protect secrets. Trust meant weakness. Loyalty meant ability to manipulate. So eventually he stops believing sincerity even exists. And I'm pretty sure you would too. That's why his relationship with the Akatsuki matters so much. For maybe the first time in his life, Kasame actually feels like he belongs somewhere. And ironically, one of the most cynical characters in Naruto become one of the most loyal. His death honestly says everything you need to know about him. Even at the very end, Kasame chooses loyalty to the only people he believed accepted him. It's tragic because underneath all of the brutality, Kasame was somebody desperately looking for a genuine connection in a world that taught him connection wasn't real. Number 10, we have Orochimaru. Orochimaru is terrifying because his motivation is one of the most human fears imaginable. He's a perfect spot to break the top 10. He fears death. His motivations are not by revenge or hatred or peace. It's just death. Orochimaru is horrified by the concept of mortality. The idea that knowledge disappears, that time runs out, that human beings are temporary beings. And that's a fear almost everybody understands on some level. The difference is Orochimaru abandons morality completely in response to that fear. He does human experimentation, he steals bodies, he manipulates and lies. Nothing matters except escaping that limitation. What makes Orochimaru fascinating is that he sees humanity itself as incomplete. To him, morality is just a limitation holding evolution back. And that's why he becomes so obsessed with Sasuke. Sasuke represents unlimited potential, a transformation, the possibility of transcending normal boundaries. Orochimaru is basically scientific obsession without ethical restraint. Pure curiosity detached from any kind of empathy. And I feel like that's horrifying because scientific progress without morality has caused real-world disasters throughout history. That's why Orochimaru still feels so unsettling all these years later. At number 9, we have Gaara. Pre-redemption Gaara is one of the most important antagonists in all of Naruto, because he proves one terrifying truth. Naruto could have become exactly like him, the same loneliness, the same rejection, and the same childhood isolation. The difference is that Gaara completely lost faith in love. Imagine being a child and realizing that the person ordered to protect you is actually ordered to kill you. That breaks something inside a person. And from that moment on, Gaara develops this philosophy that only his own existence has value. Everyone else becomes disposable. Pain becomes proof of life. Violence becomes reassurance. And I think that's why Gaara is so unsettling early on. Because he's not cruel for fun like Hidan is. He's just emotionally hollow. He doesn't feel anything. And the really brilliant part about Gaara is how Naruto defeats him. Not just physically, but emotionally. Naruto forces Gaara to confront the possibility that suffering doesn't have to turn people into monsters. That loneliness doesn't automatically justify hatred. Gaara is basically Naruto's first major ideological victory in the series. His redemption is one of the best in anime, because it feels earned. Gaara doesn't magically become a better person overnight. He slowly learns how to trust people again, how to care for others, and how to exist outside of pain. And that's genuinely beautiful character writing. Number 8, we got a weird one, I'll admit, but please hear me out. Number 8 is Nagato's Akatsuki. I know this might feel like a weird placement. I think the Akatsuki as an organization deserves its own spot on this list, and I will explain. It's because the Akatsuki isn't just a group of villains, it's a collection of people failed by the shinobi world in completely different ways. And that's what makes the organization so compelling. Every member represents a different response to suffering. Pain turns suffering into ideology. Konan turns suffering into emotional exhaustion. Kasame becomes consumed by cynicism. Sasori becomes obsessed with permanence. Deidara embraces destruction and impermanence. Hidan uses religion to justify violence. Kakuzu loses faith in everything except money, and even Obito eventually uses the Akatsuki as a vehicle for escapism. That's why the group works so well compared to a lot of other anime villain organizations. The Akatsuki doesn't feel random, it feels thematic. They're broken people trying to force meaning onto a broken world. One of Naruto's smartest decisions was making the Akatsuki feel sympathetic at times. And I wouldn't say that they were justified, just sympathetic. Because once you learn their backstories, you start realizing something uncomfortable. Most of these people weren't born as monsters. They were shaped into monsters. War shaped them. Loss shaped them. Corruption had shaped them. The shinobi system itself had shaped them. And that's why the Akatsuki became more than just a villain group. They're basically physical proof that Naruto's world is fundamentally broken. The organization itself becomes a commentary on the cycle of hatred the series constantly talks about. I think that's why the Akatsuki group remains one of the greatest anime villain groups ever created. And it's not just because they're cool, even though they are absolutely cool. It's because every member feels like a different kind of tragedy. At number 7, we have the one, the only, Itachi Uchiha. Itachi is one of the most morally complicated characters in anime history. And what makes him fascinating is that Naruto never fully presents him as right or wrong. Itachi's entire philosophy is built around sacrifice. Sacrificing your own happiness for peace. Sacrificing your reputation for stability. Sacrifice yourself for the greater good. And on paper, that does sound noble. But Naruto slowly reveals the horrifying cost of that mindset. Itachi carried unbearable burdens completely alone. He isolated himself emotionally, he lied to everyone he loved, and he destroyed his own clan. Psychologically, he tortured Sasuke because he believed suffering would make Sasuke stronger. That's tragic. It's not evil, but it's tragic. And what makes Itachi so compelling is that he genuinely believed this was the only path available to him. He thought peace required secrecy, manipulation, and personal sacrifice. Naruto ultimately argues against that philosophy. The series repeatedly shows us that isolation creates more pain, not less. That hiding the truth allows hatred to grow. Even Itachi himself eventually admits he failed Sasuke. That self-awareness makes him more compelling. Itachi isn't glorified as perfect. He's portrayed as a brilliant, loving person crushed beneath impossible circumstances. And I think that's why fans still debate him to this day. Number 6, Obito Uchiha. Obito is probably one of the most misunderstood villains in anime because people reduce his entire character to he started a war because his crush died. And that interpretation completely misses the entire point of his character. Ren's death wasn't the sole cause of Obito's fall. It was the final confirmation of something he was already beginning to believe. The world destroys innocence. Think about Obito before Madara got to him. He was optimistic, kind, idealistic. He genuinely believed people could protect each other. And then reality tears that belief apart. War, child soldiers, manipulation, and pointless suffering. Ren's death shattered the last piece of hope he had left. That's why the infinite Tsukiyomi appeals to him so deeply. To Obito, the dream world isn't evil, it's a mercy. A reality without suffering, without loss, without the cruelty of human existence. That's what makes Obito scary. Not because he's wrong about suffering existing, but because his solution is surrendering reality entirely. Obito gives up on the idea that people can improve the world. Naruto refuses to. That's why their ideological clash works so well. Obito represents hopelessness. Naruto represents perseverance despite hopelessness. That's one of the strongest thematic conflicts in the entire series. And for number 5, we have Tobirama Senju. Now this is probably my hottest take on the list, because technically speaking, Tobirama isn't a villain. He's one of the founders of the Hidden Leaf, one of the most intelligent shinobi in history, the man who helped build the infrastructure of the modern ninja world. But if we're being honest, we're talking about philosophy and antagonism and the people responsible for creating Naruto's conflicts. Tobirama absolutely deserves a spot here, because Tobirama represents something extremely dangerous: fear-based governance. He genuinely believed he was protecting the village. That's important. Tobirama wasn't evil. He never was. He wasn't sitting around twirling his mustache, thinking about how much he hated the Uchiha, as many people like to joke about him being racist. He believed that Uchiha were emotionally unstable because of the curse of hatred, and instead of trying to heal that divide and bring everyone together, he institutionalized it. The Uchiha were pushed to the margins of the village, placed under surveillance, given authority through the police force, but also isolated from the center of political power. And Tobirama likely thought that this was practical, to have them controlled, to have everyone safe. But what he really actually did was create resentment and distrust and alienation. He turned an entire group of people into suspects inside of their own home. Naruto makes it pretty clear that this decision planted the seeds for future disaster, because once people feel separated from the larger community, tension starts to grow, paranoia starts to grow, and then fear grows. And eventually, both sides stop seeing each other as people and start seeing each other as threats. And that is exactly what happens with the Uchiha. What's fascinating about Tobirama is that his prejudice isn't cartoonishly exaggerated. It's subtle, subversive, systemic, the kind of bias that hides behind logic and security. He doesn't outright say, "I hate the Uchiha." He says, "I'm being realistic." That's what makes him such an interesting character to analyze, because real-world discrimination often works exactly like that. People justify unequal treatment by convincing themselves that it's necessary for safety or stability. History is full of governments segregating, monitoring, or targeting groups of people under the justification of maintaining order. And even when those policies are created out of fear instead of outright hatred, the damage is still real. That's why Tobirama is such a fascinating moral gray area in Naruto, because he absolutely helped build the Leaf Village into something strong. But he also helped create the political environment that eventually destroyed the Uchiha clan. His policies didn't create a peace. They delayed conflict while quietly making it worse underneath the surface. That's one of the smartest things that Naruto has ever said politically. You cannot build lasting peace on distrust. Eventually, fear turns into resentment, and resentment turns into tragedy. I think what's really interesting is that Tobirama basically represents the beginning of the systemic problems Naruto spends the entire series trying to solve. A world where people respond to fear with control instead of understanding, isolation instead of communication, and suspicion instead of trust. And the tragedy is that Tobirama probably thought he was doing the right thing. He wasn't malicious. He was pragmatic to a fault. That's what makes him compelling. And sometimes the people who caused the most damage are the people convinced their actions are necessary. Next up, we have Madara Uchiha. Madara feels less like a normal villain and more like an inevitable consequence of the shinobi world itself. Because Madara wasn't born evil. He was born during a constant state of war. A world where children were sent to battle before they were even old enough to understand what they were dying for. And what's important to remember when talking about his philosophy is that Madara didn't become disillusioned overnight. His worldview was built through decades of loss, betrayal, and endless violence. He watched brothers kill brothers, clans slaughter each other endlessly, peace treaties collapse, and hatred pass from one generation to the next. Eventually, Madara reaches one terrifying conclusion. Humanity is fundamentally incapable of creating a lasting peace. Naruto goes out of its way to make that argument understandable. Because when you really look at the shinobi world objectively, Madara has a point. The entire system is built on suffering. Children become soldiers, pain becomes normalized, and villages profit from that conflict. Even the so-called heroes of the ninja world are participating in cycles of violence constantly. So Madara stops believing peace through understanding is even possible. He sees hope itself as naive. That's what separates him from Naruto philosophically. Naruto believes people can endure suffering and still choose compassion. Madara believes suffering inevitably corrupts people. And he believes that eventually hatred always wins. After everything Madara experienced, you can understand why he thinks that way. That's what makes him such an incredible antagonist. He's not evil for just the sake of evil. He's hopeless, completely and utterly hopeless. The infinite Tsukiyomi becomes his answer to that hopelessness. A dream world without pain, without grief, and without war. And at first glance, if we're being honest, it almost sounds merciful. But then you understand the horrifying truth underneath it. Madara's version of peace requires taking away reality itself. Free will disappears, growth disappears, human choice disappears. It's peace through control, peace through surrender. He doesn't want destruction. He wants total and utter control. He genuinely believes that humanity would be happier imprisoned in an illusion than struggling in reality. One of the best things about Madara is how calm he is about it. He's not screaming about revenge constantly. He's not acting out of emotional instability like some villains do. Madara feels almost exhausted, like somebody who's already given up on the possibility of human improvement. That emotional exhaustion gives him this almost mythological presence throughout the war arc. Every time he talks, it feels less like you're listening to a man and more like you're listening to decades of accumulated despair. I think that's why Madara becomes so iconic, because beneath all the insane power scaling and legendary fight scenes, Madara represents a very real fear. What if people never truly change? What if history just keeps repeating forever? What if peace really is impossible? Naruto's answer to Madara is basically the entire thesis of the series. Even if peace is difficult, even if humanity fails over and over and over and over again, trying still matters. Madara stopped believing that. Naruto never did. And that's why their conflict works so incredibly well. Next up, we have Sasuke Uchiha. And yeah, Sasuke absolutely counts as an antagonist for huge portions of Naruto. I think he's one of the most philosophically interesting characters in the entire series. Sasuke's descent into darkness didn't happen all at once. It was gradual, painfully gradual. And that's what makes his character feel real. At the beginning of Naruto, Sasuke isn't evil, he's just traumatized, and there's a big difference. This is a child whose entire clan was massacred, forced to relive that trauma over and over again by the person he loved most. And from that moment onwards, Sasuke built his entire identity on hatred. Not because hatred made him happy, but because hatred gave him a purpose. Revenge becomes the only thing keeping Sasuke emotionally functional. Without it, he doesn't know who he is anymore. That's one of the saddest things about his character. The shinobi world takes a traumatized child and essentially rewards his obsession instead of helping him heal. Every major step in Sasuke's life pushes him further into isolation, leaving Team 7, joining Orochimaru, cutting those emotional bonds, trying to sever every piece of humanity he still has left. Sasuke starts believing connection itself creates suffering. If you care about people, eventually you'll lose them. Eventually they'll betray you, and eventually they'll die. So Sasuke convinces himself that loneliness is strength, and Naruto spends years trying to challenge that worldview. That's why their rivalry works so well philosophically. Naruto and Sasuke experience similar pain but reach completely different conclusions from it. Naruto responds to suffering by seeking connection. Sasuke responds to suffering by rejecting connection. One believes bonds heal pain, the other believes bonds create pain. Both perspectives feel understandable given what they've experienced. But what really elevates Sasuke as an antagonist is what happens after he learns the truth about Itachi. That's the moment his hatred evolves. Before, his revenge was personal. Kill Itachi, avenge his clan. It was simple. But once Sasuke realizes that the Leaf Village helped create the massacre, everything changes. Now his anger becomes systemic. He stops seeing individual people as the problem and starts seeing the shinobi world as a whole as corrupt. He's not entirely wrong here. That's what makes Sasuke so compelling late in the series. His worldview becomes extreme but not irrational. He sees a world built on child soldiers, manipulation, generational trauma, and political corruption. A world where people like Itachi are forced into impossible choices. A world where suffering just keeps reproducing itself endlessly. So Sasuke reaches a terrifying conclusion. If the system itself creates suffering, then the system must be destroyed. And by the end of the series, Sasuke basically embraces revolutionary extremism. He wants to unite humanity through shared hatred directed at himself. Become the single enemy the world fears. Carry all hatred alone. And this is tragic because it's basically Itachi's philosophy taken to its absolute extreme. Once again, Sasuke tries to solve suffering through isolation, through self-sacrifice, through emotional separation from humanity. And Naruto, again, rejects that completely. Naruto believes pain should be shared, not carried alone. That connection is worth the risk of suffering. That people only break cycles of hatred together. That's why the final Naruto versus Sasuke fight works so well. It's not just two overpowered ninja punching each other. It's two completely opposing worldviews colliding. That's what makes Sasuke one of the best written antagonists in anime. And number 2, we have, of course, my personal favorite villain of the entire series, Naruto, or Pain. Pain, in my opinion, is one of the greatest antagonists in all of anime history. And not just in Naruto, just anime period. Because Pain doesn't just challenge Naruto physically, he challenges the entire moral foundation of the series. And that's what makes him so powerful philosophically, is that his worldview is completely understandable. Naruto, once again, is another character that was not born a monster. He was born into war. He had to deal with things that no person should have to deal with. Starvation, watching his loved ones die, and being in a constant state of fear. He watched his own parents die in front of him as a child. And that's important because Naruto constantly asks one question through characters like Nagato. What happens to a human being when suffering becomes their entire reality? For a while, Nagato actually believed peace was possible. That was the tragic part of this. Yahoo gave him hope. Jiraiya gave him hope. The original Akatsuki wasn't supposed to be a terrorist organization. It was supposed to create peace. But the shinobi world destroys that dream with manipulation, violence, and war. And then Yahoo dies. That's the moment Nagato completely breaks emotionally. Because to him, Yahiko's death proves something horrifyingly true, that the world crushes good people, that compassion alone isn't enough, and that hope alone isn't enough. So Nagato develops the philosophy that defines pain. People only understand suffering once they experience it themselves. That's a disturbingly real idea. Human beings often ignore pain until it affects them personally. Countries ignore war until war reaches their borders. People ignore injustice until injustice happens to them. Nagato sees this flaw in humanity and decides the only way to create peace is through shared suffering. Force the world to experience pain so catastrophic that everyone becomes too afraid to continue fighting. Peace through fear, peace through trauma. It also makes sense within the logic of his experiences. That's what elevates Pain above so many other anime villains. His worldview doesn't feel random, it feels earned. Every terrible thing that happened to Nagato pushed him closer to this ideology. And honestly, one of the smartest things Naruto ever does is refusing to give us an easy answer to pain. Naruto doesn't actually have a perfect counter-argument immediately. When Pain asks Naruto how he would create peace, Naruto struggles to answer. The series acknowledges that Pain's criticism of the shinobi world is legitimate. Naruto can't just punch away the truth. The ninja system does create endless cycles of hatred. Children are turned into weapons. Violence does reproduce more violence. Pain is correct about all that. Where Naruto disagrees is the conclusion. Pain believes suffering inevitably creates more hatred. Naruto believes people can choose understanding instead. That's why their conflict is so incredible. It's ideological before it's physical. Two people shaped by pain reaching opposite conclusions about humanity. And I think Pain's assault on the Leaf Village is one of the strongest arcs in the anime because of that philosophical tension. Every conversation matters, every emotional breakdown matters, even the destruction itself matters because it forces Naruto and the audience to confront the reality of hatred and revenge. And then we get the moment that completely defines Naruto as a character. Naruto chooses not to kill Nagato. Even though he had every right to, even though it would have been completely justified for him to, he still chose not to. He chose understanding over revenge. And that was such a foundational moment in the series and for Naruto as a character that it carried emotional weight even into his further conflicts with Obito and Madara. So for number one, I'm not putting a character. I'm putting the real antagonist of Naruto, the entire shinobi world itself. Because when you really step back and look at the series as a whole, every single major villain in Naruto is not just a person. They're a product of a system built on war, on child soldiers, and on political manipulation. It passes on trauma from one generation to the next like it's an inheritance. It's the cycle of hatred. And that's the true antagonist of Naruto. Think about it. Zabuza was created by the Hidden Mist's brutality. Gaara was created by isolation and fear. Itachi was created by political paranoia and impossible orders. Nagato was created by war between great nations using smaller countries as battlefields. Obito was created by manipulation, war, and loss. Sasuke was created by vengeance, secrecy, and institutional corruption. Madara himself was created in an era where peace literally didn't exist. None of these people appear in a vacuum. They are reactions, consequences, symptoms of something larger. And that's what makes Naruto so philosophically strong. It doesn't just ask, why are these villains evil? It asks, what kind of world would produce them? And the answer is uncomfortable. The shinobi world doesn't just fail to stop suffering. It depends on it. Wars create heroes, heroes create nations, and nations create enemies. And enemies just justify more war. It's a loop. A self-sustaining cycle where peace is always temporary and conflict is always inevitable. Even the so-called good guys participate in it. Every village has blood on its hands. Every Kage was made impossible moral compromises. Every generation passes the burden forward instead of solving it. And Naruto himself is only capable to challenge the system because he is basically an anomaly. Someone who refuses to accept hatred as the final answer. That's why the final conflict of Naruto isn't just Naruto versus Sasuke or Naruto versus Madara. It's Naruto versus the entire logic of his world. A world that says suffering creates hatred and hatred creates war and war creates more suffering. And nothing will ever change. Naruto's entire philosophy is a rejection of that system. He believes the cycle can be broken. Not instantly and not easily. And not without pain or sacrifice. But it can be broken through understanding instead of retaliation. Through connection instead of isolation. Through choosing to see people as people instead of weapons or enemies. And that's why the shinobi world itself is number one. Because it's not just the setting of Naruto. It's the source of every antagonist in the story. Every villain is just a different expression of its failure. And every arc is just another attempt to answer one question. Can this system actually be changed? And with that, that's me ranking every single Naruto antagonist based on philosophy and motivation. I've been your Noisy Cricket as always. I really hope y'all have enjoyed this video. Please like and subscribe if you did, and I hope y'all have a good one. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye. Next.